Hi, the education issue that I'm going to be discussing is segregation within our education system. Segregation became a topic of discussion back in 1954 through Brown versus the Board of Education, where the Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal was inherently unequal. However, today in our public schools, they are more segregated than they were in the 1970s. And this is largely due to the fact that there has been decades of neglect of as far as civil rights policies are concerned. And not only in the education system, but as far as community reform goes too. Even though schools in the US are 44% non-white, the minorities are becoming the majorities in public school systems. However, even though they are becoming the majority, 2 out of every 5 Latino or African American student attends an intensely segregated school. As far as community reform goes, I think that's where segregation as far as Latinos have an issue, because they live in very strongly segregated communities, and the local public schools in the area therefore become extremely segregated, consisting mainly of Latinos or African Americans, or both. For African Americans, the issue of segregation is caused mainly because of the ending of desegregation plans by the Supreme Court in public schools. Why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem because non-white schools are segregated by not only race, but poverty as well. Nearly 90% of students who attend an intensely segregated school for both blacks and Latinos, at least half of the student body is economically disadvantaged. And the problem with this is that because of the poverty level, schools in low-income communities, they remain highly unequal in terms of funding, of terms of qualified teachers, and even their curriculum remains at much lower standards than you would find at a predominantly white school. And not only does it affect their education, the fact that they're getting an unequal education, it also leads to diminished access to college. A lot of times you don't get a lot of college representatives coming to these low-income poverty areas, to these schools, to try to recruit these students. And it becomes either they will go to school and eventually drop out and more than likely, unfortunately, end up in jail, or they will finish school and they won't have access to future jobs. They will be denied the opportunities to have access to these jobs because of the school that they attended and their lack of education. By not being able to have the full education that they deserve, they won't end up being able to reach their full potential. And although this has mainly been considered a problem within urban areas, lots of inner city schools, it has been rapidly spreading to many suburban districts. How do others feel about this situation? Well, I feel like there will be a lot of people, you'll get a lot from different sides, but according to a recent Gallup poll, the majority of America believes that integration improves the quality of education for both white and minority races. And the problem is that nobody really wants to be the one to do anything about it. They understand that diversity and integration are key traits that they want their children to grow up with. They want them to be accepting and respecting of others, but they don't want to be the ones to make the change. On the other hand, you have parents and teachers who will feel that integration is unnecessary, that their students are doing fine. Those who go to the predominantly white schools, their children are doing fine. And they kind of, the government has also put many limitations on the children who attend poverty or low income schools where lots of minorities go to, because it is a way of keeping these minorities down from allowing them to move up the economic ladder, so to speak. But what can be done to help fix this problem? Well, according to a UCLA report, we need leaders who recognize that we have a common destiny in America, where we want our children to grow up together, respecting and knowing each other, and that each child is valued, that everyone is given the educational tools to help prepare them for success in our society. We have to change our outlook on different races. I think that the media helps to portray many racial groups as, because of higher levels of poverty, there's an increased level of crime, that they don't care about their education, that, they don't take schooling seriously. And that's usually not the case. They're not given the opportunity to take school seriously. They're not provided the resources. Also within the government, they need to put more of an emphasis on desegregation policies in order for anything to be fixed. They need to realize that Brown versus Board of Education has pretty much gone out the window. That once again, we are separate and extremely unequal. And reforms need to be made, policies need to be made, and turned into law in order for change to be put at the forefront, for education, segregation within the schools to be broken down, and to make sure that this doesn't happen again, to make it a priority. How will it impact the education system? Well, decades of social science research has found that racially diverse classrooms improve students' experience, they enhance their learning in education, and they have higher educational and occupational aspirations. And there's an increase in civic engagement, that people want to be more involved within their communities. And that by making classrooms more diverse and having children become aware of diversity at a younger age, it will be passed on to future generations. And many economists have, through many economist studies, they have consistently found that African Americans who attend integrated schools fare better academically than those left in segregated schools. That they were more likely to graduate from high school and attend college, and the longer they spent in integrated schools, the better they did. So not only will you have white students who continue to do well, the minority students who come to these integrated schools will do better, because they are given the resources that they need, that they deserve. And the cost for this will be a lot. In John Kozel's book, he discussed how in Letters to a Young Teacher, he discussed how a lot of government funding was denied to education systems, that schools are overcrowded because of the money that was denied to build more schools for these students. They'll have to upgrade their resources. And I know that funding is determined by standardized testing, but they need to be aware that most of these poverty schools, where the majority of minority students attend, that they are being unfairly judged, and that they're overdue funding. That although they might not do as well in standardized testing, they still need a certain level of funding to just be a successful school. How will classrooms look different, feel different? Well, as far as look different, they will, there will be more racial diversity within the school. I think that at first there will be a lot of tension and awkwardness, especially at higher levels, within like high schools, middle schools, and high schools, where the students have become accustomed to attending predominantly white schools. And however, in the lower schools, the elementary level, I think that they're more likely to better adapt to the changes. And I think that that's where there primarily needs to be a push for integration, because they will be able to, like I said, adapt to the changes better, but they'll have the values instilled in them of why segregation is important. They'll be able to better, having grown up with segregation within their classrooms, they will fare better for the benefits of what integration provides. They'll, through the enhanced learning, the higher educational and occupational aspirations, and being more involved in their community, they'll start at a younger age, and it will just become the norm for them. And for this being the norm, they will then pass it on to future generations, and hopefully help end this cycle of segregation. As far as who might disagree or challenge, I think that, as Howard, in the article we read by Howard, that many teachers who work at these predominantly white schools might feel that there isn't an issue. 85% of the teachers in America are white, and they might not feel that change is necessary, especially if they teach at one of these predominantly white schools. Parents, I think, for their children who attend the predominantly white schools, we more than likely have a very skewed perception on the different racial minorities, and feel that they might bring bad influence onto their children. And I think that there will be a lot of resistance from the government, because they will have to give out extra funding to these schools where minorities and poverty is prevalent. I think a lot of people are unaware that there is even an issue of racial segregation. Personally, from personal experience, it's only become an issue apparent to me since taking this class. And I think that to make people aware that there is an issue and there's a problem will help hopefully make more people aware and make it more of a priority.